In this tutorial, we're going to jump back into Apple Photos and look at some of those extra features underneath the adjust function while we're editing. Let's take a look. So here we are back in Apple Photos, and I've got a couple pictures of white water lilies that I took just with my iPhone. I brought them into Apple Photos, and I just wanted to go back to the adjustments and take a look at them in a little more depth and look at some of the other things that we can do to improve our image just a little bit. So to do that, to get started, I'm just going to double click on this photograph here. I really like this one. I've actually got split view open right now, so I can actually switch between each of these photographs. To turn that on or off, that's just right up here in the top bar. Over here, when I'm ready to edit, I'm going to go ahead and click the Edit Photo button, and it'll bring up our options here. Now we're just going to jump into Adjust, and we're going to work in here. Now, chances are you may not see the histogram here. If you don't, go ahead and just click on Add up in the corner, and click on histogram, and that'll add that histogram here. We'll talk more about this a little bit later. Right now, it's just nice to have. It's nice to get used to seeing if it's not something you're familiar with. First thing I'm going to do when I open up any photograph is I'm going to just check the overall basic contrast and exposure of the image. Now, I would say that I'm pretty happy with the overall exposure of this image as it is. I could try boosting it a little bit or bringing it down, but I don't really like what's happening when I start to lose those highlights here. I might even actually bring those highlights down and come down here and play with that to look at noticing how I get a lot more separation between each of those petals. So I think I'm actually going to bring down my highlights. We can also play with the shadows a little bit. By bringing them up, though, it just sort of washes out the image. I'm going to add a little bit more contrast by bringing them down just a little. Brightness is just going to overall adjust the brightness a little bit of the image. I don't really want to adjust that. Contrast, I might boost the contrast a little bit to give us a little bit more, just darken these values just a little bit. We still can see the definition in the petals, though. We could play around with the highlights to make sure we're still seeing that and we're happy. We could play with the exposure. I just really don't want to blow out these areas right here, so keep that down here. And we don't have a lot more we can do with the highlights, and the highlights aren't necessarily going to touch on that, so we'll leave that here. So moving on, we come down, we look at black point. By adjusting black point, what you're going to notice, though, is that the image just starts to get this sort of lower contrast look, and it sort of washes out. It's a nice matte look if that's what we're going for, and we might later, but for right now that's not really what I'm aiming for. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this close to the center, maybe just go to a little bit of positive value just to provide a little bit more contrast in the image. To see the adjustments that we've made with just that, the light adjustments, we can just turn these on and off. So there we are at our original, and by clicking this blue circle here, those are the adjustments that we've made. I'm pretty happy with the the changes that we made. It's just kind of boosted the contrast. I might put this highlights just down a little bit more. We've boosted the contrast a little bit in the image. It's a little less washed out. But let's play around with color a little bit. So moving down, our color adjustments, if we just start sliding this around, remember it's going to make it black and white, or it's going to make it color. Now I don't necessarily it does something weird with the the center of the flower here. So let's just go ahead and twirl this down and look at what happens. So as I move this slider, what you'll notice is when I take this to a positive value, the saturation comes up, but so does the contrast. I don't know if I necessarily want that, so I'm going to bring that back, and I'm going to just adjust the saturation by itself. And that's pretty good. Now, I don't know, the contrast, if I go up, it's just brightening that center. I actually kind of like it if I take the contrast down and sort of darken up that center part of the photograph. I don't know. I don't like it brightened for sure. So we'll actually bring that down. That's just proof that by opening this up and adjusting these, this slider may not work just as a catch-all for every single photograph to get you the look that you're going for. So it's worth, opening this up and playing with these individually. We're not going to play with black and white at all. If we wanted to make this a black and white image, we would just have to, start adjusting the slider. Maybe another tutorial. The one thing to remember, though, is that you really want to, instead of just taking the color out of your image, you really want to make it black and white, and play around with things like these neutral values and the overall tones, because there's some really nice things you can do to give yourself a some really different looks when we're talking black and white. But we're going to turn that off because that's not what we're going for, although I really like kind of what we're doing here with this pretty aggressive sort of saturation. Now we can turn off the color and we can see what kind of color adjustments we've made. We can see how those greens have really been boosted. So pretty nice improvement over the original image. I feel like, okay, we've done some color adjustments and we've done our tone and contrast adjustments, and I like that we've kind of got this good base image going. Let's save it and let's move forward with a duplicate. So to do that, all you need to do is come up to Image and say duplicate one photo. It's also Command D, super easy shortcut. We're going to probably use it several times, but what you'll notice is that in my split view, it added another version of the photograph with these adjustments made. Now, I could even go back to the original here and just say revert to original. Now we actually have our original photograph with no adjustments, and then a copy of that photograph with our adjustments made. Now let's try to do something a little bit more stylized. So I'm going to duplicate it one more time. So if I hit Command D, you'll notice we get a new copy. That way I can always go back to this no matter the adjustments that I end up making in the future. I'm really a big fan of working incrementally. Really important. It's okay to save, and it's okay to save a lot if you think you need to go backwards. Now, under color, since we want to do something with color, there's only so much we can do to change the hue values of this. The cast slider is really great for maybe helping us fix some, well, I don't know, white balance issues, or maybe it's a little too blue or a little too yellow and we need to pull that cast out of the image, or we just want to change it a little bit. I kind of like it a little warm, so I might actually move it up just a little bit. But that really doesn't give us a lot we can do with the colors in the image. To really start to get crazy with this, we're going to have to play with levels. So we're going to go up to the Add button here, and I'm going to click on Levels. So what we see is another histogram opens up, although this histogram actually has little sliders we can grab here at these multiple points. Let's subdivide these and play with these. And what we can do is, without getting into too much of what the histogram does, is by adjusting this end, these values here at this end, we're going to change the darkest values, and by adjusting this slider here, we're going to be adjusting the brightest values and everything else in between. That might be cutting colors out, that might be adding colors back in, but just overall, if you've just got levels adjustments, by adjusting this slider in, you're going to make the darkest values darker, and if I adjust this slider this direction, it's going to make the brightest values brighter, and that blows out our whites and it really crushes our blacks. We already went through and did the tonal adjustments that we like. Now I might want a little more contrast, but we already did a lot of the tonal adjustments that we wanted to, so we don't really want to play with this so much. But where it gets really fun is that we get into the individual color levels. So to do that, we're going to click on the little drop down here, and you notice now we've got red, green, and blue. Now if I click on just the red, now we see a histogram showing us just our red values from the darkest to the lightest. Now again, not getting into what that actually, what all of this really means. Doesn't matter. All you need to know is that when I start to adjust these darkest values, I'm going to cut the red out of my darkest values. So as I do that, you'll notice that I get a blue-green cast that starts to appear across the entire image. Now I can go really extreme with this, but we're starting to get some artifacting and some grossness in there, and we may not want to go do that. But if I wanted sort of a more blue-green cast across the image, I just grab that slider. Now I can adjust the mid-range values to have more blue or green in them than others, and that actually is kind of pretty. Like as we start to add the blue and the flower starts to get blue in it, that's pretty intense. Now we're not going to be able to get these whitest values, because you'd think if I maybe adjust this slider, maybe, but I don't think we want to go that extreme with it. But it's okay, I'll just keep adjusting these back till I pull that back. But since these are the lightest values, we're playing with how we're affecting the red values in the lightest parts of the image. And this is for the darkest parts of the image. So now we've kind of given it this blue cast. Now if we want to look back at what we had before, we can just go back and click on this duplicate we made prior, and now we can see the adjustments we've made. Now I think there's maybe a little bit too much blue in some of those darkest, so I'm going to pull them back. So that's not bad. So we've made some, we look here and we can see, wow, we've really boosted that up. It's actually a lot prettier than it was before. I love how rich we've made these greens. Everything stayed pretty natural. Let's play with this black point. I like to add a little more of a matte look sometimes if we're going to do this with some of these looks, although I'm not feeling this is quite as extreme as we'd like to go. So let's go play with our blue values. So what happens when we start to take our lightest values and start to shift them towards blue? We definitely get more blue into these leaves. Let's see, the petals rather. I don't really want a lot of blue to come into the image there, and it might just be in these highlights where we're playing with how much blue we have, or we could even go more orange or yellow, which I don't know. Going warm is kind of nice. We're almost getting a painterly look that's happening in here, and that's really pretty. So maybe we stick with that. Let's jump over to green and take a look at what happens when we start playing with the green values. And again, I think kind of even starting to mute some of these mid-range greens in here. We start to give ourselves a little more extreme look. And even taking and playing with these black point values and giving ourselves this little more of a matte appearance here. But you could see by playing through with these, you could give yourself lots and lots of different looks. If we go ahead and if we were to go back to the red and bring our red values back with what we've done to everything else, it now gives us this orangish look. What we should probably do is undo, go to here, hit Command D, make a duplicate, jump over to our duplicate, and now let's adjust those red values and give ourselves this look. So now what we have is that look, and then this look, and then here's our original adjustments. And you can continue to go through here, make duplicates, and make new adjustments, and give yourself a whole bunch of different options or different looks. Just fun to play with and see what you can come up with. Now, keep in mind, if you jump over to filters, you're going to notice there are in filters a few options like fade, chrome, process, transfer, and instant. Those could look very similar to a lot of the things that we did, and so we'll go back to our original look. But our look doesn't look much different than any of the filter looks. So you can see the way that they've gotten to the filters, or that Apple has created those filters, is just by just working with these adjustments and these levels to create a look. So while Apple only really gives you 5 color options as far as filtered looks go, you could see how you could create an infinite number by just working with between color, light, and then your individual color levels here to create your own looks. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments. Please subscribe. Lots more stuff coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.